I'm pleased to meet you after the mobile workshops yesterday, and I hope that you did enjoy seeing different parts of Beirut or Tripoli in that case. Now I would like to introduce our second keynote speaker for the City Street 3 conference, Dr. Thomas Shilka. He works in the Didactic and Communications Division at the lighting manufacturer ERCO. He studied architecture at the University of Technology in Darmstadt, Germany. He was a trainer for lighting seminars and workshops at DIAL from 2014 until 2015. Between 2001 and 2014, at the Didactic and Communication Division at ERCO, he designed an extensive online guide for architectural lighting, LED lighting workshops, and published in several international journals. He is co-author of several books, Light Perspectives Between Culture and Technology, and Superlux, Smart Light Art, Design, and Architecture for Cities. Additionally, he has taught lighting design at different universities and was invited lecturer at institutions including Harvard, GSD, MIT, Columbia, GSAPP, Tongji University, and ETHZ. His column, Light Matters on Art Daily, reveals various perspectives of architectural lighting. His lecture for today is entitled The Right to the Street, Streetscapes at Night, Lighting Between Identity, Transformation, and Safety. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Dr. Shilka.
Dear Christine, thank you very much for the invitation. And I would like to talk to you about an aspect which is often neglected with urban designers, because urban designers study very often during daytime and make all the observations there. And we just look at the proceedings of the last City Street conference, we find just one paper about the nighttime observations there. It was about a town in Italy, Turin, and how they used a light festival in order to enhance arts and urban living at nighttime there. And I would like to share some thoughts with you. And I'm coming actually from a city in Germany up there, which celebrates this year being founded 750 years ago. In the year 2000, they started and introduced a new claim for the city, City of Light. And this is due to the fact that a lot of lighting manufacturers are there, for example, like the lighting company ERCO, where I work there. And when we see there are many more cities there at night working there and emanating a lot of light. Light which is not only for the people, but is actually visible from space. So it presents some kind of light pollution, and we should make sure when we plan cities that we concentrate our efforts on the Earth here and not to the astronauts who are flying around in the space. And when we compare the satellite images from the recent years, we can actually see that many cities use more and more lighting. This is some kind of counter effect when it comes to the energy balances, because we have now new LED technology, which is there, consumes less energy, but at the same time, the light emission has grown over the years. Today, I would like to share with you some stories of the nighttime, stories from the Middle East, from Africa, Europe, Asia, and America. And I would like to highlight three perspectives. The one is about how the idea of lighting is linked to safety. The second aspect is how illumination is used to define a specific identity. And the third point is how activists have used lighting to transform our society. I would like to start with the first aspect, and this is the issue of safety. We have invested a lot of money, all of you, paying taxes there, in the public infrastructure. Of course, there are traffic lights, but there are also street lanterns. A public infrastructure which is there and is used there to enhance the safety worldwide. It's very often directed to the automotive industry. And we have many different designs, many different forms there. And we have street lights. Here it's an art installation by Chris Burden. And for him, the street lamps are symbols of a civilized and sophisticated city, safe after dark and beautiful to the behold. But the question is, how much light do we need actually to feel safe? And if we use more light, is it even safer? Christopher Kieber, he's an expert in lighting design, chose to analyze this in a very distant view and compared 3 countries in Europe and measured the light there, which you could detect from the space, seeing how much light is there on the streets. And he compared this with the Will we have more light, or shall I just continue? So let's focus on the presentation. And when we have this kind of graphic, we could see that Germany appears quite dark in comparison to the Netherlands and Belgium. In Belgium, actually, we have highways which illuminated throughout the night with light. And when you see what happens to Germany, the burglary rate is very low. It's just 1/3 of the Netherlands and about the half of the size of the Belgium. Or when it comes to the death rate due to traffic, it's also about 1/3 compared to Belgium or even to the United States. Therefore, Christopher asked, so if bright lights aren't needed to attract tourists or reduce the crime during the night, then why do so many cities have such bright lights? The New York Times answered this question in a recent article and said, especially for Belgium, Belgium roads symbolize a profitable but also questionable relationship between politicians, electrical distributors, and energy suppliers. This is probably the reason why it's very difficult for environmentalists, especially in Belgium, to change something, to reduce the energy level and to work on less light pollution. When we have all this kind of public infrastructure, we can detect now a new trend. This is based and linked also to modern LED technology, which becomes smaller and smaller. And the new direction is not to mount all these LEDs on high masts, on street lamps, but to integrate them in the urban fabric of the roads and the walkways, or even connect them as wearable tools where you can walk around. Let me show you some examples here. And the question is, do we still need so much traffic lights in our street in the conventional way that we have masts there projecting the light downwards? Especially when we consider that the automotive industry offers us a very sophisticated technology with dynamic headlights being very powerful. So actually, to see something on the road, pedestrians, bikes, and anything else, it's visible with your car. If you think about the next generation of the cars, autonomous driving cars, they actually don't need any light. They have their own cameras bringing along. So what is the light for? Shall we just concentrate it maybe for the boardwalk, for the pedestrians? This would save a lot of energy. And then one alternative is to integrate the light in the streets, for example, for zebra crossing. So you don't have the conventional way of light projecting onto the street, but you have a luminous street parts there which highlight crossing zones to make it a little bit safer for the people to walk there. If you're more fond about bicycles, then you might be very happy about the next generation of riding, or I'm just going back to this slide here, where Carlo Ratti from MIT envisions responsive streets where you have streets which react to the different functions during the daytime. So in the morning and evening, it's for commuters. So with green and red, you can send signals out where to drive and where not to drive. And maybe for the weekend, it will be turned into a basketball game. So you can actually change and program this and make your streetscapes very flexible based on light points in the streets there. If you're looking for very instant solutions, you can also spray light on you. It's not light what you spray, but these are microparticles which are reflective, and the headlights of the car bring the light on them, it's reflected. And of course, this attracts more attention because you see the moving people in the city there, and it's very nice if you go out for walking or doing sports. But of course, it's not a sustainable solution there when you look for a long-term application. If you prefer to go by bike, there's a new generation for riding your bike, and you have wearable elements. Your helmet sends out signals when you stop and indicates when you turn, and this brings also more safety. And it's clearly a response to the very dangerous situations for cyclists in the city that they need to announce where they are going and to inform the drivers on the road to make sure that they will have a safe trip to back and to their work and back home. If you don't like to go by bike, I have an alternative for you. If you go out the next time, there are pretty cool shoes available. And these are shoes which are tightly linked to the latest developments with IoT and in combination also with artificial intelligence. You are able to program your shoes and send out the signals which you would like to bring out to your environment to make clear that you have a red light, to make sure that people see you or that you stop or keep on walking. And when my 7-year-old daughter saw these kind of shoes in a similar way last winter, I'm pretty sure that she was excited about these shoes, not to enhance her safety for the traffic, but more to look very cool and to impress her friends. So this brings us now to the question, what do these kind of shoes represent? Are they tools to enhance your safety in the traffic? Or are they there just to be hip and to attract people and to impress them, or actually to perform on the streets and to dance and to come up with responsive kind of light sequences? Or will they be remembered that they contribute severely to the growing electronic waste which we have worldwide? This will bring us now to the second perspective in my talk, and this is a question about how cities use light to define a specific identity, or maybe if they have an identity, how they use light to change their identity to come up with a new brand image. And there are stories about a commercial context, also about to improve tourism, and even up to a national context involving politics, and also stories about the world of residential living. The latest generation of the Apple stores show a very interesting development, that here corporate international brands work on architecture and provide new elements to remove the boundaries between their shops, the interior, and the exterior and the streets. We don't see anymore the conventional way of street lights standing around the building, highlighting the boardwalk. We see here a recessed way of using light. It's not about anymore the luminaires which are there. It's not about the design of the fixtures. It's actually about the light effect. Here we find a very subtle glowing element there on the stairs which connects the inner city with the riverfront in Chicago. And it's just one part that they really think about the nighttime appearance of their stores for their urban development and how their branch image is perceived in the city. McDonald's came a year later and launched their latest generation of restaurants in Chicago. And we see a similar imagery. Open, transparent architecture, a large roof extended to the boardwalk and also bringing light there. The glowing McDonald's icon is not more the prime element there for the architectural appearance there. It's integrated in the overall architecture, and McDonald's has used the sign in a smaller way there. So it's about the overall architecture and the overall impression there in the city. And in addition, they used photovoltaic panels on the roof to contribute to the overall energy balance, which is also part with when you start to think about lighting in the nighttime. But there are also another way of streets, which are not exclusively there for the exterior, but interior. We have so many shopping malls worldwide where we have actually streets inside. And there we find a night sky as well. It's very artificial here because it's a painted ceiling, which is illuminated. And in addition, we have street lamps there. They have a very traditional way of looking. So it's a very more romantic idea to define the identity of this space here. And the stars in the sky there actually are downlights shining there as well. And this kind of identity is used to offer a very relaxed atmosphere for all the consumers which walk there through the streets and just should be kept up buying, and to forget that there's a time to sleep. This kind of design looks kind of boring to different cultures. Let's hop to China, where we have actually a TV-like screen, very large, above a public square. The horizon shifts. It's not anymore there, it's up there. We see images of the daytime during the night, interrupted by text messages, by advertisement there, and just generating a very immersive experience for the consumers to shop there. This is, of course, linked to the development learning from Las Vegas, and Las Vegas had already in 2004 introduced and spent a large roof above the Freeman Street and came up with one of the largest LED roof constructions for the exterior to give light at night and just to keep the people entertained when they're about to gamble and spend all their money during the nighttime. But there's also a different way to approach the streets, and this is when artists are involved in collaboration with landscape designers and urban planners to look for a new way. And the idea of stage lighting is integrated in these kinds of concepts. So not to make it look very functional, but to define some kind of stage there with dynamic lighting. And light is very useful there because you need just a few fixtures there and you can come up with very impressive images there and invite the people to go out after sunset and meet each other and have a very nice time. All these developments are tightly linked to the latest technology developments with LEDs. But using LEDs is not a guarantee that this is a successful concept for a city, because sometimes engineers forget some kind of details. Of course, we all benefit that we have, with LEDs, a very long lifetime. It brings down the energy costs there. But there's a small but very important aspect, is the color temperature. And when we see cities which applied new LED technology, they often forget to think about the color temperature and what the people preferred. Not to look just about the numbers, what is the most energy efficient way to use LED, but also to reflect what kind of colors do people prefer. And a lot of people in Rome complained about the new lighting. And Elizabeth Mincilli, a well-known tour guide, noted about this kind of difference. If you have trouble understanding the difference that has resulted, I can only compare it to a candlelit dinner versus a frozen food ale of your local grocery store. And this is a comparison of the very cool LED lighting in the front and the former installation of the more energy consuming lamps which you could see in the background. But bringing people out to the city is an important element, and the sports industry picked this up when they are doing their new product launches, for example. Here's an example of Nike offering a track where you could run this lap there for one time, and then an avatar is created for you. So you have a digital sibling, and you can run against them. So it's not like the Buried Marathon, which will come up soon. They run together. It's about the individual person competing against himself there. And this is, of course, connected with the new technologies, that you have sensors in your shoes and that you get feedback to improve your running. And this contributes, in a general sense, also to the issue of health, bringing people out there to motivate them to go out after sunset. And especially in regions very far in the north, where you have winter time with long periods of darkness, those kinds of concepts are very interesting, especially for the young generation, to give up some kind of initiative to go out there. But the idea and the definition of the streetscapes is not only defined by walls, or maybe in a larger scale by facades. Even the sky is already captured by brands. And when we take a look at the latest developments, for example, which we see there in drone technology, drones are equipped with light LED pixels, and you can come up with performances there, and they are used to entertain the people in the sky. And also these kinds of drones will define our nighttime experiences. Recently in Frankfurt, there was a symphonic performance, for example, and they linked this kind of music to a performance of these drones together with light. Of course, sometimes the people complain that you will see a lot of logos from the different corporate brands there, but the question is, who is going to finance these kind of new technologies in this context here? This kind of thinking, using drones, flying luminaires there, is a little bit too much for the Dutch designer Dan Roosgaard. And he is coming up with a new concept where he tries to work only on renewable energies. So you can use, for example, the sun to collect energy and to give something back during the nighttime. For example, here a path for cyclists in a town where Van Gogh worked, and this is just something to remember, the masterpiece Starry Nights, which he painted, and it's a very subtle way. It contributes to the tourism because people come to the cities there and experience the nighttime, but not in a very bright way, in a very subtle way here in this kind of scenario. And he transferred this concept also to the automotive context. So even for large buildings, you could create gates of light, for example. These are buildings which were built by the father of Rem Koolhaas, and just strips of reflective elements are used here, and your lights from the headlights of the cars give enough light to reflect them, and you could see this. So it's actually some kind of interactive installation where the cars drive here and project the light onto the architecture to show how this space feels, and it's based on small prisms which reflect the light back. Here, these are installations which are there just for a single building. But over the time, this kind of interest to use lighting for tourism has grown more and more. And Hong Kong has brought probably the first example about a symphony of light. When you compare the skyline of Hong Kong 30 years, we see here the architecture of the skyline more in a very calm way. And at that time, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank from Norman Foster was the brightest building at that time. It was a very technical design related to productivism. And then, over the time, now it changes into a symphony of light. Every evening, you have a light performance there for 15 minutes, connected also to sound. And it will entertain the people, and introduced there to point out that Hong Kong is a hub for global business, for tourism, and defining a new identity for this site, because they were aware that there will be a lot of global competition in Asia, and so Hong Kong started very early with this development to come up with entertainment at night. What does this mean if you're an owner of a building there in this kind of scenery? You need to upgrade your lighting. The pressure from the neighborhood is very intense. If you don't do anything, you're lost. You will look almost very dark compared to your very bright neighbors. So the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank started to come up with a lighting concept about 10 years ago. And the first step was to work on light beams at the building in a colored way, also in a dynamic one. But they noticed there are more and more LED facades emerging. So this building would look more traditional in relation to the other modern buildings which have these kinds of TV screens. So they upgraded their building, and now you have high resolution, almost TV-like screens, which you could see from the other side of the Hong Kong island, and see that there are a lot of video clips are broadcasted there and sent out to the people there in the city. But this is not everything there. In China, we will find more and more cities where a lot of buildings are brought together in one holistic concept for media facades. And this is not only a statement in a local concept to enhance tourism because there are now more cruise tours offered. It's also something where China would like to define a new identity, that they are a global hub and that they would like to be part of a leadership and define some kind of leadership there in a technological way and also in a business and tourism way. So this is also to point out in a global competition that you have a state-of-the-art urban scenery which is visible from the streets. The cities often look for very important points there to come up with these kind of dynamic solutions. But we find also in cities old buildings which are used. They are landmarks. And in a time where we have terror attacks, historical landmarks are used with the symbolism of national flags. They're overlaid on the buildings to express some kind of sympathy with the cities which suffer from terror attacks. And these buildings are virtually synchronized. So if there is a very severe terror attack, you could see the Eiffel Tower or the Sydney Opera House and many other buildings worldwide with the same flags in the evening, and your social media channels will tell you that there is a deep sympathy of many countries with those who suffer from these kind of terror attacks. But even in peaceful times, we see that you have to subordinate your own identity if you're an owner of a building when important state visits are happening. So you might have your own LED show for the evening, but if there's an important state visit, you're showing now the flag of the respective nation. So when you have the former idea of parades and flags there, it's just a very small welcome gesture. Today, countries are looking for great gestures there to welcome people, and this is just part of this kind of concept where you see buildings changing their appearance there. We are going now from very large projects to very small ones. For example, housing. Even after many years of apartheid in South Africa, you could see that the social infrastructure still represents social inequalities. It's a plan where you could see a wide community which has a lot of small streetlights, and then there are the others. The regions, the districts where the African people were sent to, and due to the fact that they expected a lot of crime, they installed 30 or 40 meter high masts with floodlighting. So the atmosphere, if you're living in one of these sheds there, is very similar to have stadium lighting above you, or that you're living in a container terminal with large floodlights there. And this means a lot of glare, and it doesn't really feel very private there when you are living under these kind of floodlights there, compared with the infrastructure which is provided for the white people there in Africa. And when we just take a very quick look at the daytime view, we could see the great photos which Johnny Miller took here, and with his kind of drone view, he can really capture these kind of moments there where you have separations based on the infrastructure there, and when you would send a drone up at nighttime, you could see this and the respective there as well. This kind of problem with social inequality brings me to the last aspect of my keynote here, and this is how activists use lighting to transform their society. It could start in a very small way. For example, the New York City Light Brigade used former Christmas decorative lights and converted them in signs with text. Their mission is to work on topics like gentrification, climate change, and immigration. And when they protest at night, it's much easier for the press to capture their thoughts. So it's really thought about the reception of the press, the media, and to create some striking images for social media here. And light is a part of this kind of communication here. Or when we go to a different project, for example, in Sydney, where we see that artists collaborate with the residents there. This project is about gentrification, and the owners try to avoid that these buildings are demolished, and new buildings will be erected there on a different price level there. So the artist went to all the residents and offered them a lamp and an interface on their smartphone where they could express their emotion with light. So you can define this with the color, or also if you have kind of signals with sequences going very slow from one color from the next one, or if you have a very intense color change there. And from the streets, you see these kind of signals. Though the people complain, it's not really to entertain the city from in the streetscapes. It's really meant to be as a sign of protest, and artists go into these kind of roles and have led to a new way of a type of protest, and this is called artivists. Peter Weibel wrote a book about global activism, and he describes the new type in this way. The field of actors has broadened with the artivist. Creativity and innovation are democratized. User innovation and user-generated content no longer influence only the world of mass media, but also the art world. So this is very interesting to see how activists and the art world collaborates to transform our society. Or if we go back, for example, to the Occupy Wall Street movement, the Illuminator is a van driving through the streets, and they have a projector in their van and a telescope moving out and then projecting graphics onto buildings. Of course, there's picking out interesting buildings from the history, from the politics there, and send out in a temporary way their messages here. And of course, they're still very active at the moment with the current politics in the United States. But sometimes light is the only way to protest. This happened to be in Spain, where the laws changed, and the only way to protest was using light, because the laws forbid that you do protest in front of governmental buildings. Let's take a closer look.
In March of 2015, the Spanish government approves the gag law, despite criticism from the UN and its rejection by over 80% of the population. The new law violates the right of freedom of expression, banning protests in front of Congress, the holding of assemblies in public places, and the participation in a protest without previous notice. Faced with this reality, we decided to protest in the only way the law allowed us to.
To a different kind of demonstration in Spain.
Thousands of people marched to protest a new law
that they say endangers civil liberty. But none of them were actually there.
A unique way to express their discontent.
The world's first holographic protest.
홀로그램 tüntetést tart.
Manifestation virtuelle à Madrid.
스페인에서 수천 명의 시위대가 등장했는데
La primera de hologramas del mundo.
Via a website that allowed anyone, anywhere to take their image, convert themselves into an apparition.
Subiendo sus imágenes, subiendo sus gritos, subiendo sus pancartas.
Recreando a miles de personas reales.
And it opens up some doors and capabilities that I never thought were possible.
The underlying argument is that holograms have more rights than humans. I mean, that's kind of another part of the protest, which I have to say is quite impactful.
You can't arrest the hologram, right?
The protest reached a global audience of over 800 million people. 400 million impressions in social media opened a worldwide debate on the right to freedom of expression. 330,000 people signed the online petition to repeal the law, and the hologram protest went from the doors of the Congress to the inside.
La movilización, señor ministro, continuará y la protesta continuará.
Today, we all have our own instruments to contribute to large protests. Just use your flashlight, and you can send out a signal to the cities that you complain what's going on there. And this happened, for example, in Turkey before the elections, to send out the signals that they are not happy with the current situation regarding justice and many other topics. So this democratized a little bit the way that we don't need other people to send out signals of light at nighttime, and that we rely on other technology. Everybody here is equipped almost probably with a smartphone and can contribute to take signals there. In former times, protests were more quiet because there were candles put down there as a very quiet sign. Today, it's much brighter, necessary for the new world of mass media, which is looking for a very impressive image to capture this and to send out a signal worldwide to catch attention. So where will all these kind of developments lead? We see that there are a lot of different stories at nighttime in the cities in different ways. Stories about safety, stories about changing identities, and also the effort to change the society. And we see that also technology contributes to this kind of development there. And this brings up now some new relevant questions. For example, what happens when we have more and more light? What is the relation between the private and the public? When we have a lot of color design, is it more regarded as kitsch, or is it still design? And when do we get from one mode to the next one? And is there a switch available for you to switch off public lighting? Just imagine the situation that your apartment is up there and your balcony is flooded with red light and you're having a very nice dinner time. Do you feel annoyed? Where is your switch to switch off the lighting? Or does your smartphone provide you an app where it can reduce the light level or maybe even change it or come up with a different scenario? So these are very interesting questions in the future, and they're not solved because there are no strict laws defined for public lighting and the excessive emission towards the private world there. So we have to think about this kind of Disneyfication in our cities, that cities turning into a stage and affect our private living in our apartments. Designers are sometimes driven by striking images. they're looking out for new paths to create light and nighttime sceneries there. But the real question is, what can we do for the most people on the ground? We should focus on projects within our design, education, and research to bring people together, to motivate them, that after sunset, that there's a welcoming gesture to enjoy life outside there. But at the same time, we should consider what happens to our nature. Because when you just change something, a lot of other people change something there as well. And some installations are renovated, and they also affect the worldwide appearance. And as a consequence, we encounter more and more light pollution. And so for this reason, we should make sure that we are aware when we colonize the light, and that we find the right relation and the right balance between the possibilities which are there with lighting technology and with sustainable design approaches. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thomas, thank you very much for the fascinating lecture. And if I may make a joke, I think we are a blackish dot on the map from time to time because of the electricity cutouts.
Of course.
On behalf of the organizing committee, we would just like to say a big thank you for the lecture today and leave you with a souvenir, a Lebanese souvenir that perhaps reflects some light at night. And I just invite Street3 and the Dean to join me in giving you a small present.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, sparkling and brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll have a coffee break at the back of the hall, and we start the sessions at the FAD building at 11, please. Have a good day.